Prime Field.
UConn went 38-0 before the Final Four. That sounds like a season defined by dominance. The film tells a different story. It was a season defined by adaptation. And that's why this might be the greatest kind of coaching job for Geno Auriemma's career. Not because he won another championship. He didn't. Not because he had the most talented roster. He didn't. It's because at 72 years old, coaching in a sport that barely resembles the one he built, Geno had to reinvent almost everything he believed in just to keep UConn at the top. Think about what UConn actually was entering 2025-26. The championship core from 2025 was gone. 3 players left for the WNBA. The roster no longer had the continuity that defined the Maya Moore teams, the Breanna Stewart teams, or even the Paige Beckers era. Instead, Geno was coaching a hybrid group, returning veterans, freshmen, and for the first time in program history, 2 major transfer portal additions. That matters. For decades, the UConn formula was simple. Recruit elite talent, develop them internally, teach the system over 4 years, build chemistry through repetition. Now look at this roster. Kaylee Heckel arrived from USC. Sarah Williams arrived from Wisconsin. Sarah Strong was suddenly carrying superstar expectations. AZ Fudd became the veteran leader. KK Arnold had to become a floor general. This wasn't a traditional UConn roster. It was roster construction from a completely different era of college basketball, and somehow Geno made it work. Let's start with the defense, because that's where this coaching job becomes impossible to ignore. UConn finished number 1 nationally in points allowed, number 1 in defensive rating, number 1 in opponent field goal percentage. Watch the film. This wasn't a team relying on one dominant rim protector erasing mistakes. This was collective defensive execution. Look at the weak side rotations. Watch how quickly help defenders arrive at the nail. Watch the communication during ball screen coverage. Everything was connected. Every possession felt rehearsed. Every rotation happened half a second earlier than opponents expected. That's coaching. When a young roster holds opponents to just 33.5% shooting for an entire season, you're not looking at superior athleticism alone. You're looking at thousands of repetitions, thousands of corrections, and complete buy-in. That's what Geno created. And he did it while fighting a problem that never truly disappeared: injuries. Again. The story of modern UConn basketball is impossible to separate from lower body injuries. ACL tears, Achilles ruptures, calf problems, year after year, player after player. The names change. The pattern doesn't. The most important example this season was Sarah Strong. The public first noticed it in February when she missed time with calf tightness. At the time, it felt minor, but go back through the timeline. That injury never completely disappeared. It simply became manageable. Then came March. And here's the detail that changes everything. According to Geno, Sarah Strong may have completed only 3 full practices during the entire month. 3. Think about what that means. The best player in America wasn't building rhythm through practice. She wasn't sharpening timing through repetition. She was surviving, managing inflammation, managing workload, trying to stay available. Yet she remained the most impactful player in the country. The numbers are absurd. First nationally in win shares, first in defensive win shares, first in player efficiency rating, first in defensive rating. She led UConn in scoring, led them in rebounding, led them in steals, led them in blocks. That's not normal production. That's total influence. Watch her defensive possessions. She wasn't simply blocking shots. She was solving problems. She could switch on to guards, tag rollers, protect the rim, close out to shooters, recover back inside. One possession, she looked like a wing. The next possession, she looked like a center. The next possession, she was initiating offense. Every elite team has a star. Very few have a player who becomes the structural foundation of everything. Sarah Strong was that player. Which brings us to Phoenix, because that's where the season changed from a coaching masterpiece into a human story. South Carolina didn't just beat UConn. Actually, they stressed every physical weakness UConn had been managing for months. Look at the game carefully. The pace became more physical. The possessions became longer. The collisions became heavier. The margin for error disappeared. And in the middle of all of it was Sarah Strong, still competing, still defending, still making effort plays, still producing one of the defining defensive moments of the game with a fourth quarter block at the rim. But something was different. The frustration became visible. The physical toll became visible. Then came the image everybody remembers. The jersey incident. Strong rips her jersey after a missed play and has to return wearing a generic number 55 replacement. On the surface, it's a small moment. But look deeper. That image captured the entire season. The National Player of the Year. The centerpiece of an undefeated run. The player carrying enormous expectations. Standing there in a replacement jersey because everything had finally reached a breaking point. Not mentally weak, not emotionally unstable, simply exhausted, physically, emotionally, competitively. That's what championship pressure looks like. And that's where the conversation shifts from what happened to what happens next. Because the most important UConn decision wasn't made during the season. It happened afterward. Sarah Strong turned down summer basketball opportunities, including USA basketball commitments, to focus on recovery. That decision tells us something significant about where college basketball is headed. For decades, elite players competed year-round. High school, national teams, college, international competition, then repeat. The assumption was simple. More basketball creates better players. Modern sports science is challenging that assumption. UConn appears to be acknowledging a reality that many programs have resisted. Availability is a skill. Recovery matters. Biological sustainability matters. Especially when your best player is carrying elite usage and elite defensive responsibility simultaneously. The old approach prioritized constant development. The new approach prioritizes preservation. And that creates an interesting question. Is the summer shutdown a warning sign, or is it the smartest decision UConn has made in years? I lean strongly toward the second interpretation, because if the goal is winning a national championship in 2027, every decision should be measured against that objective. Not summer accolades, not exhibition tournaments, not additional exposure, championship readiness. If limiting basketball now increases Sarah Strong's durability next March, the decision pays for itself. But this story isn't really about Sarah Strong, not entirely. It's about what her situation reveals regarding Geno Auriemma. Because throughout this season, another storyline kept appearing. Retirement, every interview, every forum discussion, every national broadcast. The same question, how much longer? And for the first time, Geno didn't completely dismiss it. He openly discussed missed opportunities to retire. He talked about aging. He talked about changing player dynamics. He talked about a sport evolving faster than ever. The transfer portal. NIL. Roster movement. Player empowerment. The entire ecosystem has changed. Yet here's the irony. The season that generated the loudest retirement discussion may have provided the strongest argument for continuing. Because this season demonstrated something people rarely associate with Geno anymore. Adaptability. He integrated transfers, he adjusted practice structures, he managed injury limitations, he developed young talent, he built the best defense in America. He guided a transitional roster to 38 consecutive wins. That's not legacy management. That's active coaching excellence. The version of Geno we saw this season wasn't relying on reputation. He was solving problems. Daily, constantly, creatively. And that's why I think the phrase, greatest coaching job, has real merit. Not because it produced the best team. The undefeated championship teams were better. The Stewart teams were better. The Moore teams were better. But difficulty matters. Context matters. This roster required adaptation. The circumstances required flexibility. The challenges required evolution. And at 72 years old, Geno delivered all three. Which leads to the biggest question facing UConn basketball. What if the loss to South Carolina wasn't the end of the story? What if it was the setup? Because now the roster understands the physical demands of a championship run. Now the program's embracing a recovery differently. Now the transfer experiment has proven successful. Now Sarah Strong enters another season with experience, motivation, and hopefully a healthier body. For years, UConn represented inevitability. This version of UConn represents something else. Vulnerability, adjustment, reinvention. And strangely enough, that may be what makes them dangerous again. The 38 wins were impressive. The loss revealed the truth. Geno Auriemma's final chapter isn't about proving he can still win. It's about proving he can still evolve. And based on everything we watched this season, he already has.
Prime Field